Councilmember Brednicki will be here shortly. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a Duval City Council meeting on January 5th, 2021 at 7:02 p.m. And with that, would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
All right, I lost my mouse. Councilmember Brednicki.
Here.
Councilmember McHenry.
Here.
Councilmember Remington.
Here.
Councilmember Hoag.
Here.
Councilmember Naplin.
Here.
Councilmember Langle. She's here. She's just on mute. We have a quorum.
Thank you. On additions or corrections to the agenda, please add under consent payroll for December 18th, 2020 and January 5th, 2021 in the amount of $479,684.99. And claims for December 29th, 2020 through December 31st, 2020 in the amount of $257,710.72. And on under unfinished business, please move Agenda Bill 21-08B Municipal Code Chapter 10.01 update from item 3 to item 1. And with that, are there any council members that would like to speak this evening? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion to
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Where would you like to add the discussion item for?
Thank you for catching that.
With last minute.
Why don't we go ahead and move that under
Presentations or scheduled items?
let's do, oh, my computer's being wonky here. Hold on just a second. Let's go under scheduled items and then we'll do it after the administration update. Okay. All right. And with that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda?
So moved, McHenry.
Second, Michelle Hoag.
We have a motion by Councilmember McHenry, a second by Councilmember Hoag to approve this evening's agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
Mike Remington still moved.
Second, Michelle Hoag.
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Remington and a second by Councilmember Hoag to approve this evening's consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, we will move on to comments from the audience. First off, Clerk, have you received any written comments this evening?
I have not.
Okay, thank you. And now we will open it up to anyone in the audience that would like to speak. The clerk has admitted you into the meeting and all you need to do is unmute yourself, provide your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. I see one person unmuted. It looks like a Rick Schaefer. Would you like to speak?
I did unmute. No, and I really don't need to take 3 minutes. I'll make this very quick, but I just appreciate being invited to the meeting. I talked to a number of you and I know you guys suggested that I attend, and thank you very much. I'm looking forward to listening and learning. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to scheduled items. First off is the mayor's report, proclamation for National Mentoring Month. Clerk, I do not have a printed copy handy. Do you have one handy?
In a minute. Are you hoping I share it on the screen? Is that what you're?
That would be great.
Okay, give me just a minute. I will have it momentarily. Ooh, not that big. Hold on. Okay.
All right. Whereas January 2021 will mark the 19th anniversary of National Mentoring Month, an annual campaign to focus attention on the need for mentors, as well as how each of us can work together to increase the number of mentors to help ensure positive outcomes for our young people. And whereas the City of Duval honors volunteer mentors who support young people by showing up for them every day and demonstrating their commitment to helping them thrive. And whereas mentoring programs like Youth Success Mentoring, a program of Snoqualmie Valley Community Network, makes our communities and our state stronger by driving impactful relationships that increase social capital for young people and provide invaluable support networks. And whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, mentoring programs have stepped up to fill gaps for young people and families, connecting them with resources and ensuring that mentoring relationships continue virtually to ensure that physical distancing does not mean social disconnection. And whereas mentoring plays a pivotal role in career exploration and supports workplace skills by helping young people set career goals, equipping mentors with the skills needed to support the professional growth of young people, and drives positive outcomes for young people and businesses. And whereas quality mentoring promotes healthy relationships and communication, positive self-esteem, emotional well-being, and growth of a young person and their relationships with other adults. And whereas students who meet regularly with their mentors are more than 52% less likely than their peers to skip a day of school, and youth who face an opportunity gap but have a mentor are 55% more likely to be enrolled in college than those who do not have a mentor. And whereas youth who meet regularly with their mentors are 46% less likely than their peers to start using drugs and 27% less likely to start drinking. And whereas almost half of today's young adults report having a mentor in their youth, and those rates appear to have been rising steadily over the past several decades. And whereas National Mentoring Month is the time of year to celebrate, elevate, and encourage mentoring across our state and recruit caring adult mentors in the City of Duval. Now, therefore, we, Amy Okerlander, Mayor of the City of Duval and Duval City Council, do hereby proclaim January 2021 is National Mentoring Month in the City of Duval. Thank you, Clerk.
You're welcome.
And with that, Mayor's report, I did take a couple of weeks off with my family. It was quite rejuvenating. Came back to the fire hose today. I think most folks have seen that the governor has issued new phases today. I haven't had a lot of time to review those in regards to our reopening plan. I think everyone's well aware the vaccine is here. Distribution is slow. And our local Duval COVID numbers continue to climb. I believe we had, 8 new cases over the weekend. So making sure physical distancing and following the guidelines as best as possible is still the guidance we want to encourage people to do. For folks that haven't heard, there are now 2 new strains circulating the world, one of which from the United Kingdom, which the current estimate is that it's 70% more contagious than the original version of COVID-19, and another newly one discovered in South Africa. So we don't think, from what I'm hearing from public health folks, where we thought the holidays might be the worst, we might be in for a really rough few months until that vaccine gets distributed and enough people are vaccinated to stop the spread. Other than that, we had our Sound Cities Association Legislative Committee meeting today and just reviewed comments from PIC. I believe that's going back to PIC. I believe it's tomorrow or the next week. I cannot remember offhand, Councilmember Hogue. And in general, we're getting back into the swing of things. Thanks again to Council for approving the budget at our last meeting. We're already moving ahead with a lot of those key items, especially knowing we don't know what the year holds for us. So trying to tick off those really important items as quickly as we can this year. And with that, I don't have anything else for the group. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and move on to council reports. We didn't have anyone that wished to speak. Do we have any council committee reports? Councilmember Hoag.
So I really enjoyed being on the finance committee the last year with Councilmember Lingo and Councilmember Naplin and the staff, working with the staff. It was really, it was a great experience. This year coming up, our Mayor Pro Tem Remington is going to be taking my seat in that on that committee. But I did want to put a plug that our first finance committee is January 13th at 11 o'clock, and it's open to the public to attend. So that's it, but I'm moving to the land use committee. So
Thank you, Councilmember. And then we will move on to administration updates. And first off, we'll go to Ms. Thomas for redevelopment requirement, and then we'll move on to Mr. Laniszewski with the capital facilities RFP discussion.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of our community. This evening, I have a little bit more lengthy of a report. I will get to the one other item that the mayor talked about, but it's been a little while since we've had an update. I did want to let you know that community development obviously had a pretty big, busy year yesterday. So that would be the building and planning department. At the end of the year, we had 185 new residential units issued in 2020. 77 of those came in November. We issued a total of 531 permits last year, and we had 200. Oh, I'm not sure. You know what? I think I might have misdone that number. I think, but we did have over 2,000 inspections, and it might have actually been 2020, but we had 205 in December. It is legislative session season, and it starts officially on Monday. And so we want to start providing a kickoff of emails to council and also a council update at each meeting. We technically don't have a full body designated to do this. And so I think it'll be a little bit of all hands on deck from a couple of different directors based on areas of expertise. We're beginning to prepare for public facilities to open. I know it sounds like it might still be a ways off, but I think it helps provide some morale boosting as well. We're struggling being closed for almost a year. So we want to start thinking about that future opening. I am now ready to talk about the redevelopment requirements, and I do have our interim building official here this evening as well that can chime in, Brian Keller, and also Steve Laniszewski, because this basically it's all three departments that have a process or a point in development that happens during redevelopment, and it's different triggers. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. There is a written report in your packet, so hopefully you all had an opportunity to take a quick peek at that. We did provide a project summary of the project that was discussed in the public session last time, which was for the Duval Veterinary Clinic update. That project essentially combines two existing buildings into one, remodels the existing, and it also elevates one of the buildings and adds a front entrance on. I included the site plan in the packet so you could get a little bit, a visual perspective of that. So what does trigger improvements beyond potentially what they do for just the building? And so the city, like many other cities, use a valuation method, and that comes out of the building department. Historically, the city has used the King County assessed value for existing structures. What this means is the proposed cost evaluation is submitted by the applicant either during a pre-application process or when it's submitted on what the cost of those improvements would be for the internal and external improvements to the building. The city would then review that, and sometimes we'll go back and refer to what we call, which is the ICC, and that can be used for the valuation. If it looks low or high, sometimes they'll provide a bid. So we just kind of look at that and then we verify that. And then that trigger for improvements is when the valuation of the structure is a certain percentage of the valuation of the existing to the proposed improvements. So if the value of the building, say, is $200,000 and they were going to do more than X amount of dollars, so if they were going to do 50% more than that value, then they would trigger other improvements. So essentially a trigger point is at 50% of the value of the existing structure. One of our challenges is that we have relied on King County assessments, and sometimes they're really low, sometimes they're spot on, but when they're low, it does impact potentially the ability of somebody to come in. That 50% looks a lot different. So for example, this particular project, both those buildings are assessed at a total valuation of $130,000. So that doesn't leave you a lot of room for that 50% valuation. So we do think we have some solutions to that. So we'll get that next. There are also some triggers that the departments have. So Planning and Public Works triggers other improvements based on the valuation that we get from the building department, and also based on the change of use. And so a change of use would happen if they're taking that building and occupancy and changing it from one use to the next. Sometimes they're more intensive, sometimes they're less intensive. So we do look at that as well. And then if there's that trigger of change of use or the valuation is over 50% for that addition, then sometimes other items can be triggered, and that could be curb, gutter, sidewalk, street trees, landscaping, ADA, lighting, undergrounding of utilities. So whoops, sorry about that, you guys. I apologize. So we're recommending that in particular for this project that they have what's called a certified commercial real estate appraisal, because obviously the county has underestimated the value of that structure. And then they could provide that to the city, or they could even provide the bid for their project. But we'd also still need the valuation of their existing building. And this might be a way for us to better evaluate if that trigger is there at that 50%. Before I move forward to the last administrative item, I wanted to open it up for some council questions or discussions. We said that we would come back and have a conversation. This can just be one of a couple, but I wanted to just start the conversation.
Councilmember McHenry.
Just a quick question. This is not my area of expertise, so I was curious what it costs to have a certified commercial real estate appraisal, if you knew offhand of a ballpark.
It's about $2,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle.
I just want to say that I'm familiar with the 50% method. I think the recommendation is appropriate. It's really the best way for the applicant to go.
Councilmember Hoag.
So in my first read of these documents, I was thinking that it was the assessed value, the total assessed value, but it's only the assessed value of the land. I mean, you take the land out, right? It's just the structure. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Councilmember Napland.
Sorry. So I think it's great that we're working to be creative here. I'm just curious if you expect that this change will happen and be available to any future applicant, and then also, you know, the community feels very strongly that they want sidewalks and lighting. And is this going to put us into a situation where we will not be seeing as much of that in the future? Because a remodel might be a way to avoid having to do certain improvements that the community is hoping for and expecting. So I don't know. In this one, it clearly seems like the valuation of the building is extraordinarily low, but I'm just kind of concerned in the future what this will look like as we try to get those sidewalks built.
That's a really good question, Councilmember Naplin. This is just our existing process and something that we would offer anybody that comes through the process. So if they're in the future, if there's another building that seems undervalued, we would recommend to them that they do a real estate appraisal. Those are certified, so we can trust in that appraisal. And if we thought something, you know, was amiss, you know, we would definitely look at that and ask for some additional information. At this time, we're not proposing changes to our existing policy. And the policy was originally created so that we could try and create those linkages as buildings improved or as we had new development. But I can tell you it can be difficult for whether it's a residential, you know, homeowner or builder that has a vacant lot and they're just doing a new house, and then they get to do the same curb, gutter, sidewalk, street trees, and potentially undergrounding utilities. And it's the same for some of our small builders as well. So this isn't the first time this item has come up. This happens every couple of years where we get these questions.
And Councilmember McHenry?
So in regards to specifically businesses, especially ones that may not be on our beautiful main street that has all the sidewalks and everything already, have you, I mean, just offhand, do you know of any other cities that have maybe small grant programs to help some of that relief for small businesses who want to remodel? Because it seems like an improvement to the city as well. You know, it's a nice redo of the front and everything. So I was just wondering if that was anything we could look into for the future.
So Councilmember McHenry, you brought up something that's been on my list for several years now. There are some cities that actually do sidewalk programs. And one of the things we discussed a few years ago when I was still a council member was that big capital expense for some of those small businesses trying to just simply expand, and how they might not be able to do it. And when on my long-term bucket list, but we don't have the staff capacity or the funding right now, is to actually long-term develop a grant program to help people replace or install sidewalks. And in particular, on the economic development side, for example, this is a prime example of a business where if the city had a revolving loan fund or a grant program using TBD dollars or what have you, we could provide some level of grant funding if the applicants met certain requirements, for example, connecting to existing sidewalks. But Mr. Laniszewski and I actually recently discussed that again, and we don't have the capacity to develop and staff a program like that right now. But that's an item that's not going off of my list until it's finally achieved. So we hope to get there someday, but we just can't do it right now.
Is it something that having a restart of, for example, Public Works Committee, is that something that the council members on those committees can help brunt some of that work?
No, it's all staff work. It's putting a grant program together, meeting requirements, reviewing applications, reviewing permits. It's pretty extensive. So I really appreciate the thought, but it's really more about making sure we have the right staffing levels and ensuring that we can maintain it, and then having the funding to seed the program.
One quick follow-up. Are there any county or state programs that hit that category at all?
Mr. Laniszewski might be able to answer that. Obviously, Complete Streets would be one of those programs. Mr. Laniszewski, do you want to pipe in?
Good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens participating. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. So there are some Department of Commerce grants, but I don't know that there's anything specific to, fulfilling your frontage requirements, as economic development. So it's a tough call. And yeah, funding it would be certainly the city's harder part to participate in. So there are simple approaches, residential treatments are more, because I think the program the mayor and I went over years ago was, Mayor, was it Forks or somewhere out on towards the coast where the maintenance staff themselves, I think it was participated in funding from the applicant, but the crew did it, and it seemed to be a cheaper program that the city must have to have written off some of that time.
Yeah, I
They're
believe
part
that
of the
was,
match for economic development and building that infrastructure. But when you get into a downtown setting, you've got wider sidewalks, and it's a little more professional grade, and tools and everything else to make a 5-foot sidewalk is a little easier than a 10-foot. So it is difficult. I do feel and empathize with this, but not to sell Director Thomas's process short here, but just because they get an appraisal doesn't mean they would meet the qualifications per se to avoid the required improvements. So it's a tough deal, and we have to say this to a lot of people, and it isn't always comfortable or what, but it is it is a process, and this is part of that process. Somebody doesn't like it, and we review it, and that's great. It's what we're all about here. So visions change, so that's something to look at.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle and then Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Yeah, I don't know if this is applicable, but when we set up the transportation improvement area, we specifically added language into that where neighborhood projects could be funded with a portion of the money. And I'm just reminding us that that language was added, and it might be something, I'm not saying necessarily specifically for this project, but maybe for this project, it is something that we did earmark because we wanted some small amount of that fund to go for neighborhood projects. And, maybe in the negotiation around doing this project, there's a way for us to match part of what they do. That might, since it is an area that needs those types of right-of-way improvements. There's for sure, I've driven past that many, many times and thought about what they might do with those two buildings. So just a reminder.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make 2 points. One is to underline that this is really a good policy that we have making these requirements. That 50% takes place when folks are remodeling and they're required to put in an elevator for ADA or to add sprinkler systems for safety reasons. So when you're making those large improvements, they would be required if they were building a new building to put them all in anyway. So maintaining our sidewalks, lighting, I think Jennifer Naplin put it so well. It's a safety consideration. It's a top priority. We hear that from our citizens in our last survey. Having said that, the question on the table was, would council support looking at, an opportunity to help with this? And I think within our rules, if we have a way, a reevaluation to do that, I think it's great because there's positive things on the other side.
Mhm.
It's about economic development. I couldn't be more pleased that one of our businesses is doing well. To have a veterinary clinic, and I think we have a couple of them in town, but it's a real priority for our citizens with pets and animals, and real critical. So I'm real pleased for them. I do think if we can find an opportunity to support them in this within our rules, that would be a great way to go.
Thank you. And it sounds like there's kind of consensus for this option that Ms. Thomas has put forth. So unless there's objections, Ms. Thomas, I think we should start moving forward with looking at that.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm clear because I'll need to work with Steve. So we're obviously going to go, recommend that they do a commercial appraisal so that we can try and see where we're at. And as Steve said, even if they do this, it is unknown if the 50% trigger. My guess is we're going to be right at it or above it honestly. And then is council wanting us, which would be Steve and myself, to look at what the cost of that curb gutter sidewalk would be and bring that back as a cost, and then work through some sort of, I guess, I don't want to say negotiation, because this goes through, through a hearing. It's a permit just like any other. So I'd have to figure it out. I'd have to rely, I guess, on Steve and probably our city attorney to help guide us through this process, because we haven't done this. But if it's TBD eligible for expenditures, I think the questions I would have for Steve are they doing it, or are we doing it? How does it work? So I think we need to come back and do a little bit more work.
Yeah. And I should point out, too, also in the original TBD legislation, we did make sure that sidewalks were included. So besides the small neighborhood projects, I would have questions offline for our legal on whether or not we have to create a specific program and guidelines for what qualifies for neighborhood projects. But, this is, to me, this is a really worthy thing to look into and potentially test. Councilmember Napland?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that area specifically because I believe that's where one of the rapid flashing beacon would be located, right there at Valley. And I know for a fact that a lot of people are coming off the hill, and that's how they cut in. From Taylor Park, and then they come down that street. I've walked it a million times. That intersection is not super fun for pedestrians. There's a lot of turning, people trying to take lefts. There's really no sidewalk on either side, right, as you're approaching Main Street. It's not ideal. And so, I'm just thinking about, future complete streets, or, the same program maybe that did 275th. I'd just love to see that area focused on. I think it's, a really important approach to Main Street. There's businesses up there that people might want to walk to. Anyway, so yeah, anything we can do to get that completed would be amazing.
So I have one more follow-up. So what I'm hearing is that you would like administration and Steve and myself to look at bringing the sidewalk from Main Street up to the eastern property of the vet building, so that we're not doing an incomplete linkage. So it would be complete from Valley down, from Main Street up to this particular business. Or are we looking at, okay, thank you. I just want to make sure so that we can kind of evaluate it.
I think from my memory, there is a sidewalk on the north side eventually once you get past the grocery store. And on the south side of the road there is eventually a sidewalk. There's some residential properties a little further up. So, I'd be curious the cost. There's definitely some sidewalks further up Valley that you would connect to.
Okay, thank you. I think that gives us some good direction. Okay, the last item that I have on the administration update, which is always exciting for us at a staff level, is we're kind of in that kind of last part of the hiring update for some positions that were approved last year. So we're in the job offering stage for both the community development position and the finance position. And we'll actually be talking not today, but at a future meeting, kickstarting the other jobs that we're looking at for 2021. And I also know that the police department is also ramping up into a hiring process. So it's good for our local departments and for our community. So thank you for approving those from all of us on the administrative team. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Remington?
Thank you, Mayor. Being on the Public Safety Committee, I know that we have had a couple of police officers leave the city, their employment recently, and I thought maybe we could just take a moment with Chief Hurt to just talk about that. I know they are ramping up to do some new hires as well, but we've had a couple of folks that have been with us a while, and it's, I think, nice to recognize them as well for their service.
Sure, thanks. Chief Hurt, Police Department. Thank you, Councilmember Remington. So we do have a few vacancies right now. We have 2 officers lateral out of our police department. One is going to Chelan County. One has gone to Chelan County, and one is actually moving to the City of Monroe Police Department. So we do have 2 vacancies. Not surprising. Again, you know, I've been very transparent with you folks my entire time here. You know, we hire entry-level officers, and we hope to get 3 to 5 years of service out of them. And we appreciate and understand the fact that they're looking for more opportunities and things that we just don't provide because of our low crime rate, the specialty assignments and those types of things. So, you know, again, the best we can hope for is that we give them the training they need and prepare them to move forward with their law enforcement careers. Again, it's not a surprise to us. We are seeing, not just locally, but, you know, I guess countywide, folks, especially in our career field, are trying to get out of King County for a variety of reasons, and that's what's happening. So we do have oral boards on Friday for lateral applicants. We have up to 5, I think, right now, and then next week we have 2 days scheduled right now, the 13th and 14th. And right now the 13th is full for entry-level candidates. We have 9 that we're interviewing on Thursday, and we're ready to schedule as many as we can on the 14th. So we have lots of opportunity to bring in a different group of people. But again, it's no surprise to us. We appreciate the service that those folks gave us. And again, when you're bringing in new officers like we do at a low rate, and we hope we can get what we can out of them, and hope that we prepare them to at least move forward and represent the city of Duval the best they can. So that's where we're at. Thank you, Councilmember Remington.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions on the hiring? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the government facilities draft RFP. Mr. Laniszewski.
Good evening again, Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. So what we had provided was a draft. A draft of a RFP that might work for the city of Duval and its needs for our facilities review by a third party to help us really get solid direction on what we have and where we really should be going, and how we can afford those services. So I don't expect you all have went through it with red lines to date. And I know, just talking with staff, you know, I was on vacation and working with Laura quickly and other people doing work last week while we were gone. It's in a pretty good state. I'm sure we're missing a couple things. And one of those things Laura and I mentioned today was just double checking how it fits into our comprehensive plan. And I think we've got that figured out, but I know the mayor was interested in making sure we participated and assessed the emergency management needs of the city. Obviously, we'll not have an emergency management center like you would see at King County, but we should probably reasonably assess and provide some space somewhere in the future. Obviously not at a standalone facility, likely not affordable or reasonable to utilize that way, but have something on the books. So we should probably add some sort of excerpt on, you know, the city's desire to add emergency management space for this. A couple other notes moving forward. Timing, I know that's critical. We have a lot of things happening. New budget year and work programming doesn't slow down, so just trying to get things moving. So we put this together. Hopefully people got a chance to review it. I'm not sure, Mayor, if we want to open up the comments or people submit things, or, you know, the sooner we all agree and get this out the door, the sooner we can assess and get somebody on board to assist the city in assessing its needs. So
Yeah, and Mr. Lynch, you just made me remember one other component that we were looking at for the new facility, and that's making sure that there was community access space. So we'll need to put that in there as well. But it's probably more efficient if folks have ideas for what's missing to email it to Steve and I so that we can make sure it gets incorporated appropriately and help us get the process moving.
And certainly, I think high level thoughts. Are we close from people's perspective? Are we far off? Have we gravely forgotten something? I think I don't want to just show it and go. A couple minutes of discussion would be helpful. I think we're all on the same page here. We know we got a lot of things and a lot of needs, but not a lot of money. And how do we get to where we need to go? So,
Councilmember Lingle.
I'm going to take a closer look, but I actually thought it was really pretty comprehensive. And, I sent that other thing to you. It has nice pictures about different types of workstations. But the one thing about it is, given, what's going on with the wastewater facility needs, given that this could be a big deal, I think we should look for opportunities as this gets, near complete to get the community on board sooner than later in the event that we have a financing need on this. We don't want to leave them behind. We want them to feel like they're part of the decision, even if it's a small portion of the decision. It's a very significant decision for the future of the city. So that was the one thing I thought of when I looked at it.
Yeah, we all envision, I think, significant public input if we build buildings, and especially if we consider selling buildings as well.
I'm talking specifically about the planning, not the other part.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or feedback for Mr. Laniszewski? Councilmember Napland.
I haven't really had a chance to dive into it. And so are you saying that you're just going to run with it unless maybe people have comments on the side, or is this going to come back as an agenda bill for us to review before it goes out? I'm just trying to understand what we're being asked.
It won't be an agenda bill. RFPs typically do not come through council and have approval before they're sent out. But we're providing the opportunity for additional input to the process.
and I would love to have comments, if we could have them in some sort of condensed time frame. If this Friday's too short, obviously through the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not opposed to it, but I know it's important to the city. It's important to moving some things along this year. I assume we're going to get pretty deep into the buildings we have and what do we do with them through this process, which I know is, on everybody's mind too. And that goes into, Councilmember Lengle's discussion on funding. There will be things we do and don't have, and some things we already do. And so I think the sooner we get it, the better. So yeah, if we get maybe comments by next Wednesday, is that reasonable for everybody to take a peek at? And maybe we can kind of finalize it through Public Works Committee. And the one thing, Councilmember Remington Pro Tem, we didn't get to is, when are we going to set those dates and times? So I guess I could work offline, at least for the first month, and maybe just gathering folks, but I have no problem, running that through committee, mayor, and moving forward once we get some comments. But yeah, it's not a huge deal.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
I'm excited to see this project move forward. It's, taken us a while to get to this point, and I think we're going to get a lot of great information to help us plan. So I can't wait personally. Moving on, we do not have any presentations this evening, but we do have a public hearing on the floodplain ordinance. And with that, I will go ahead and open the public hearing, and Ms. Thomas, you're welcome to take it away.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, and members of our community. This evening, Council is holding a public hearing for the floodplain ordinance. The city adopted a 6-month interim ordinance in July of 2020. Community development is now going through a formal process to adopt the policy permanently. Planning's completed SEPA, which is our environmental determination. We've completed the 60-day review through Commerce, and we've had our Planning Commission workshops. our next step, which is one of them this evening, which is holding a public hearing, and Planning Commission will hold its public hearing next week. And then we will come back forward with an adoption of a final ordinance at the January 19th meeting. So I'm just going to go kind of give a broad overview of the ordinance and what we call the FIRM, which is the federal insurance rate map, just so you can get a better idea. We've seen pretty much the exact same documents. They haven't been updated since the interim, but because we have the public with us and we go through a formal process, I want to make sure and come back and have these discussions again. So for those that you have not seen a flood insurance rate map, this is what it looks like. And this is the one that is for the city of Duval. And so we use it at a staff level. We used to use them much more back in, I'll call it the early days of planning, when we had to rely on these maps because we didn't have the same mapping or GIS information. I did want to just show you the next slide, which provides a little bit of kind of what I call aerial on the ground information. So I grabbed this information from the county. And so this is a couple pieces of Duval. And so right here where the cursor is, this is the tech center. This is our wastewater treatment plant right here, just for some perspective. And the blue line is the 100-year floodplain, and the green line is the 500-year floodplain. FEMA has us create policies for the 100-year floodplain, and so that's what we do. That's the 1% chance that we'll get a flood to a certain place in elevation. And so you can see that we're pretty safe when we look at the 100-year floodplain, the majority of our infrastructure. But once you kind of go into that 500-year floodplain, you can start to see that it does start to creep up into our facilities, whether they're city facilities or they're private facilities, which would be, some of our businesses. So you can see the western building for the tech center is impacted a little bit by the 100-year floodplain and also by the 500-year floodplain. And then if you go up north to Pence, you can see that while he doesn't have technically any structures within that 500 or 100 year, there is parking area. And then over here on the right-hand side, you can see that this is actually City Hall right here at 15535. So you can see we're pretty protected by the trail during flooding, but if there's a 500-year flood, we will likely be fairly impacted in those areas. So I just wanted to share with you the difference between the 100-year floodplain that's regulated versus the 500-year floodplain. This is a good illustration that we use in planning that shows a little bit about the characteristics of a floodplain. So you can see this lower illustration shows what the floodplain is from kind of bank to bank. And then what the floodway would be. So floodway is an active area where there's velocity happening. The fringe is where you just kind of get that more backwatering, but it's pretty calm. And then you see down here in the trough, that would be the normal elevation. And then you see this term called base flood elevation. That's a term that we have to use when we are permitting projects within there. This really does, at least the picture, not necessarily this particular structure, really shows the Snoqualmie Valley pretty well, because we have a pretty large across the valley floodplain and floodway. And you can see, obviously, we've had some pretty high water the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of rain, but luckily we haven't had too many infrastructure issues like with 124th. And then this is just another illustration that shows some information. This one is, isn't necessarily the city of Duval because there's a coastal and A, and so there's coastal flooding, but I wanted to show it just for reference. So how did we all start? In 2006, FEMA notified cities essentially that we were going to have to go through an update process of the firm map, which we just went through. And on August 19th, the firm map for all of Western Washington became effective. And to retain eligibility in the NFIP program, communities are asked to update their floodplain management policies. And so we do that about every 10 years. Our floodplain really didn't change as part of that map update, and that was one of the things that was a question that we received from Planning Commission, but it was also a question that we had at a staff level as we were going through these mapping exercises. In December of last year, so just about a year ago, Ecology kind of turned to the notch up and said, okay, everybody has to update and you have until X date. We were notified February of last year that we would be required to update our policy by August 19th. Though sometimes the one thing that the federal government forgets is that states do have other regulatory processes and how they have to go through a process with its community and the outreach. And so because it was so late that we were notified, and by the time we completed a compliance check, we were in June before we could even bring it forward. And so there wasn't enough regulatory timelines to issue SEPA and to go through commerce review to meet that deadline. And we were one of actually many cities that were in that boat. So there were a lot of communities that adopted an interim policy that was effective for 6 months. And we actually held a public hearing in September that we were required to do because of that interim ordinance. So what we do is we look at flood hazard areas. So we kind of looked at that map. We know where our flood hazard area is, and what we're required to do is adopt a program and policies to protect those areas. But we do allow some minor development within the floodplain, but mostly it's infrastructure like outfalls, and whether it's for stormwater or for our sewer outfall. So those are the types of uses that we would see. Sometimes you see utilities that'll go through floodplains. You know, for example, there's utilities that are bored underneath the Snoqualmie River. So those required a floodplain permit. And we do issue a couple of floodplain permits here and there. We've probably done maybe 5 or 6 in 20 years. We don't do a lot of permitting, and most of them are really specifically for for utilities, but once in a while a little bit of fill for a project. This was just kind of a reaffirmation of the declaration of emergency that was issued, made it really difficult to do community outreach. And it's one of the other reasons that many cities decided to go through an interim and then go and do a further reach out. And so again, we've completed our our process. We had the interim regulations, and now what we're doing is we're making them permanent. We haven't made any changes to the policy since the last time you've seen it. I won't go into the National Flood Insurance Program, but in general, it's a program that's utilized up and down the valley from Monroe up to even Snoqualmie. Even though they're at the top of the falls, they're impacted by the North and the South Fork and the sum of those rivers. So just so everybody has a gentle reminder, all of our policies in general within our zoning codes are formatted in a certain way. And so we always look at, so right over here where you see the sections, 1484, 110 through 60, we always have an authority, a purpose, and a definition section. And then below that is typically some sort of administration, or that's where the policy is located. So it is definitely a typical policy. And so this was Exhibit 3 from our original ordinance. And so it remains the same. And so we haven't proposed any changes. So this evening, I'm recommending that council take public testimony if there is any, and then planning commission will hold its hearing next week and make a recommendation to city council for final adoption. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, do we have any members of the public that would like to provide public comment on this evening? Okay, the clerk has admitted all of the attendees.
Not quite all yet. Sorry. She stopped
Not all yet?
sharing her screen and it moved on me.
Okay. Do we have everyone now?
Yes, now we do.
Okay, great. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to provide public comment on this topic this evening? I'm not seeing any, so I'll give it one more second. All right, I'm not seeing any comments or feedback, so we will go ahead and close the public hearing. And we will move on to our second public hearing, a temporary use duration ordinance.
So good evening again, Mayor and Council. Laura Thomas for the record. I forgot to say that last time. So again, I think this year of pandemic has created a lot of interim type policy work, and this is one that we brought forward over the last couple of months. Temporary uses can include the tents that we're seeing in the region for our restaurants and retail uses so that they can meet the social distancing and the health requirements under the governor's order. When we brought this forward, the governor had not yet ordered a closure again of our restaurants and allowing them to only do outdoor. So I am very thankful that our council was proactive and on the front of this and created an interim policy that allows our tents to remain out there for a longer duration of time. And so again, I think this, again, we talked about this is really just a small gesture to our business community to allow them to try and operate in a manner that is safe and that they can hopefully remain economically viable moving forward. But again, when we do an interim ordinance, we have to hold the public hearing within 60 days. So we're at that time point right now. So just to kind of refresh, it was ordinance 1271, and what it did is it temporarily for 6 months amended our temporary use section, so 1452-020D and E. So what did we amend? What we did is we said that these temporary uses could be out there for 120 days. So they could be permitted for 120 days of use. Our previous policy was 45 days. And so that wasn't very much time. And then we also created a kind of a termination date as well. And so we went from 90 days to 120 days. And then we also created that you could get more if you went through a hearing through a CUP as well. So these are pretty typical processes that you would see in other communities. And we did make some calls to other communities to see what they were doing, and it was all over the board. Some didn't even create a policy. They were just kind of letting what happens. Others had policies that were similar to ours, where they did an interim. Other cities extended it for for the duration of the pandemic or until an order was lifted. So every community is taking a little bit different approach. And we took kind of a more typical approach, which was an interim policy. So moving forward, what's our recommendation? Obviously, this evening is to hold the public hearing because we're required to, because we adopted an interim ordinance. We'd like you to take and consider public testimony, and then obviously close the public hearing. And then our next step would be to take this policy back to Planning Commission. We've had one touch of this already, to look at it and see, is this something that we should permanently do? and we can talk about that at a later date, but it is likely yes, so that we can match the building code side of it of 120 days. So in the end, we will come back with a proposed policy, but we have to go through a formal process, go through the community, go through SEPA, and go through the Department of Commerce for an official 60-day review. I can tell you that there is a little bit of hindsight on this interim ordinance. We are already closing in on the 120 days for one of our tents that's being utilized by one of our businesses. And so I've talked to our city attorney, and I will be talking to him again later this week, because we might need to come back and extend that timeline like some other cities have, which is either through the end of some sort of declaration of emergency, or to do it through the end of the year. So we'll stay tuned on that. But that's one of our next steps, is to bring back an amended, I guess, or revised proposal that would be more permanent, or even at least to carry the temporary what we have forward for a period of time. So at this time, Mayor, I'm recommending taking public testimony.
Yes, I can do that. I just want to double check and make sure when I started this that I opened the public hearing. And if not, the public hearing is now open. So if there's anyone on the line that would like to submit public comment, now is your opportunity. I'm not seeing anyone.
I'm sorry, Mayor, this is Rick Schaefer.
Yes.
I certainly applaud what the council has done, what the city has done to help support our local businesses. And certainly, in my opinion, anything that we can do to be lenient with these regulations to help our businesses, keeping public safety in mind, of course. But I certainly want to have businesses be able to extend this, because as I think most of us realize, we're in for a number of months still before things are even semi back to normal. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to submit public comment? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and move on to an executive session to discuss qualifications of applicants for appointments to council. We'll start with 10 minutes. If we need more time than that, then we will come out and extend it. And this is being done under RCW 42.30.110 sub 1 sub H. So with that, the council members will leave the meeting and go to executive session and return, and the clerk will let the public know if we need to extend and how many extensions and how long those will be. So thank you. Oh, Councilmember Naplin.
I don't see the email for the executive session. Who sent it?
It was put on our calendar, I believe.
I think it was sent by Laura. Oh, it's okay. Let me check my calendar. Yeah, because the email goes away once you accept it. I see it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. As soon as everyone's back, we can reconvene because it has been 10 minutes. And clerk, do you have the matrices ready? Excellent. Are we missing someone? Am I miscounting? Nope, we got everyone. Wait. Nope, we were waiting for Michelle, Councilmember Hoag. All right, we have everyone here now. So we will resume The Duval City Council meeting from executive session at 8:16 p.m. For the record, almost everyone was online by the 8:15 mark. We were just waiting for one person to get back, logged back in. And with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, Agenda Bill 21-02A, appoint new council member to vacant position number 2. And so we've just come out of executive session where council discussed the qualifications of all 7 candidates. And the next step will be to vote by matrix to reduce the applicant pool to 3. And the clerk will lead the council in that vote.
Okay, so I am going to read council members' names in position order. And you will give me the 3 names of the people that you would like to move forward to the next step. Councilmember Brudnicki.
Laura Bradley, Rick Schaefer, John Isaacson.
Councilmember McHenry.
John Isaacson, Laura Bradley, and Rick Schaefer.
Councilmember Remington.
Thank you. I'll just say what an outstanding pool. How fortunate we are as a city to have 7 outstanding candidates. Those I bring forward are John Isaacson, Laura Bradley, and Rick Schaefer.
Member Hoag.
I would like to bring forward Laura Bradley, Rick Schaefer, and Mario Belmer.
Councilmember Napland.
Rick Schaefer, John Isaacson, and Laura Bradley. And I also want to say how much I enjoyed our conversations, and I look forward to seeing hopefully every one of these candidates involved with the city because they bring so much. And it was just really a pleasure to get to know you a little bit.
Councilmember Langle. You're on mute.
Thank you. I guess it's alphabetical. Laura Bradley, John Isaacson, and Rick Schaefer. And I would say, yes, we have plenty of opportunities for more citizen participation here in Duval. And this was a really, really hard choice for me. So thank you all so much for applying.
Excellent.
The 3 candidates moving forward to the next step are Laura Bradley, John Isaacson, and Rick Schaefer. And just for, I believe all of them are on the line right now, just to let you know, you will be getting a follow-up email from me to figure out how we're going to do the next step virtually. This is going to be a first for all of us. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. I did want to ask Mr. Remington, since you are the one who gathers all of the questions for interviews, what is your deadline for council to get suggested interview questions to you?
So the 19th is the day we would do those.
Yeah.
I have over 25 questions currently that we've used in the past that I can select from. I think that they're pretty common questions, but important questions. If you have a specific one, you're welcome to send that to me. Probably, I would say let's make next Monday the deadline. So that gives you a few days to think about it. If you could get it to me by next Monday, and then I will finalize that and have it to the city clerk probably Tuesday of next week.
All right, thank you. And I'm actually quite surprised with that many candidates. Normally, there's a lot more division on which 3 are to move forward. So it's exciting to see such a strong consensus. But yet I also know it was a hard decision for council members to decide who their top 3 were. So thank you for all that have applied. And I know I'm looking forward to the next steps of the process as well. So with that, we'll move on to Agenda Bill 20-03E or 03A, contract for rapid flashing crosswalk beacons on Main Street at Valley, Northeast 145th and Northeast 143rd. This is for discussion and or decision. This is technically the first touch of this portion. However, the beacons have been discussed at length during the course of the Main Street project. So I think we could pretty much consider it very well discussed. We're just at the final point now with the State Department of Transportation allowing us to move forward with this. So I know that this is something that the community and everyone in council has wanted for a long, long time, and to see it come up is huge. So with that, Mr. Laniszewski.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. So before you is documentation to move forward with the construction and installation of 3 rapid flashing crosswalk beacons at Valley Street, Northeast 145th and Northeast 143rd. This was previously, maybe the majority of this group may not be aware because it was a 2017 conversation. The city did choose to install foundation and some conduit runs for these installations in the actual construction of the Main Street South project. So they exist. We did have a lengthy review time with WashDOT on this channelization improvement, CHAN plan approval, they typically call it. So that has happened. We moved forward last year with that. The money is sitting in the account from the Main Street project. We are excited to get this installed. Time is of the essence. I would love to have these out by spring. There is an 8 to 12 week lead time just on the ordering of the rapid flashing beacons, very similar to what we had on the timelines for our 275th sidewalk extension project. For the council and community's notes, we did specify the exact ones we have in the city as far as manufacturer. These are not solar, these are electrically wired, but they are the manufacturer that we can now stock internally, as we have 2 other sets of rapid flashing crosswalk beacons, and we are not in the business of keeping many parts around. So we try to be efficient with that. Plenty of opportunity. You saw the bid tabulation form. We received a nice amount of bids, so we're pleased with that, pleased with the price, and excited to move forward as expeditiously as possible with the installation of these crosswalks. That is all I have.
Any council questions or feedback? Councilmember Naplin?
Just really quick, is there a plan to alert drivers kind of that there might be something new happening? I know, when a new light or a new stop sign is installed, I just worry it might catch people off guard to see suddenly someone dashing across the street or,
Yes.
yeah.
So it is not ours, but there is a traffic signal revision ahead sign that would go up. You may not notice it at Stella and Main if you're going southbound, because Stevens, per WashDOT, they changed out the actual intersection signal head. So it is a flashing yellow arrow. So we have, we asked for that a while back. They did it at Big Rock Road, and they just recently did it at both of our intersections at Stevens and Virginia, where they changed the center turn lane out to a rapid flashing. So that reduces a signal call for another leg of the intersection, which normally can get more cars through an intersection safely. So you skip a left turn arrow green with a rapid flashing yellow. Obviously yellow is proceed with caution when it's flashing. So there are traffic revision ahead signs that we would install. And I say that because the one that WashDOT put up is on an A-frame, and I pick it up almost every time I walk by it, right by City Hall. So with that said, yes, their crosswalk does exist at Valley. It's just not, controlled with any flashing. So yeah, there you go.
Right. Any other?
A board and I about died though. Like...
Any other questions? Not seeing any. So the next question would be, does council want to suspend your rules to approve this evening and get it in process so that we can get on that ordering schedule?
Mayor Mike Remington, I would move the council suspend rules on consideration to approve this rapid flashing beacon bill tonight.
Second, Rudnicki.
Right. Any discussion on suspension of the rules? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Would a council member like to make a motion on the underlying bill?
Mayor Mike Remington, I move that council approve Agenda Bill 20-03A, contract for rapid flashing crosswalk beacons on Main Street at Valley Northeast 145th and 143rd Place.
Second, Rudnicki.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Remington, a second by Councilmember Brudnicki to approve the agenda bill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And I think Councilmember Brudnicki and I can have big grins because this has been a long time coming and through multiple councils. So thank you all. This is really exciting for everyone in the city. All right, we'll move on to Agenda Bill 21-04A, Resolution Fee Waiver for Acres of Diamonds for discussion. Ms. Thomas.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, and members of our community. This evening before you, you have a fee waiver request from Acres of Diamonds. They provide homeless moms and children with community-based non-transitional housing and associated wraparound services. They're definitely one of our partners within our community. The service provider is proposing to expand their campus to include additional housing and service facilities. They requested the city waive planning and public works staff time while reviewing their application. The waiver does not include fees assessed from the building department. So when it becomes a building permit, those fees would not be waived. That's not what's proposed. And then neither would third-party review or costs associated with the permit portion, which could be a mailing or postage. So those hard costs we wouldn't absorb. Staff estimates the cost of processing the site plan review application at approximately $7,500. We do believe it'll come in under that, but it just depends on how many reviews there are. Council previously passed a similar resolution. That project was postponed and did not move forward. So now they've reapplied essentially for the most part for the same project, but a couple of different components. So I can take any questions that council may have.
Not seeing any questions. Is council wanting to wait on this or to sit on it for a couple of weeks or where do you want to go? Councilmember Lingle.
I support this. I've actually been tracking this project for a long time, but I guess now going on 2.5 or so years. So I'm really excited to see it move forward. And I think we should keep an eye out for other opportunities to help this project go forward. There may be some others that we can provide letters of support or whatever. So I'd like to see this move forward as soon as possible.
Thank you. Great. So council would have a choice to suspend your rules this evening, or we can postpone it to the next meeting.
Mayor Mike Remington, I think enough council folks support providing this waiver, especially at this time in our history and the good work that is done by folks over at Acres of Diamonds. With that, I propose that recommend that council approve suspending our 3-touch rule on this item in preparation to approve it.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Michelle.
Great. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Remington and a second by Councilmember Hoag to suspend the rules to be able to vote on this evening. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. Motion passes. And if someone would like to make a motion on the underlying bill, that would be appropriate now. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'll do it. There's so many that have been involved with Acres of Diamonds over the years, so I was waiting to see if would like to, but I would be happy to. I move that City Council approve Agenda Bill 21-04A resolution fee waiver for Acres of Diamonds.
Do we have a second?
Second, Napland.
Great. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Remington, second by Councilmember Napland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And moving on to Agenda Bill 21-05A, Employment Contract for discussion and decision. And this will need a suspension of the rules, but Ms. Thomas, please take it away.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So this evening, we are proposing an employment contract with a future employee for the building official position. We have gone through the process of funding the position and coming up with a salary range. We've gone through the notice of interest phase and have made a conditional offer to our interim building official. Administration is recommending the employment contract offer include 60 hours of management leave time and a 2-month severance package. The position is exempt and is not eligible for overtime or comp time. Finance and Administration is working to bring forward a management leave policy that would allow administration to avoid or minimize bringing employment contracts in the future to council. We've wanted to actually have this policy done last year, but with all the other policies that we were working on, we couldn't get it to FAC at the last quarter of last year, but we're working on it. And in fact, we're in the process of looking at what other communities provide. Our former finance intern actually pulled 25 comparable, what we would call cities. And then I asked the finance director to make sure that we include some additional cities that are representative of our formal salary and compensation survey. So she's working on that. So as of today, we've added 3 additional communities. So I'll forward that on to council since that will be on an FAC committee. So I think we're ready to take any sort of questions or comments that you might have on this employment contract.
Councilmember Napland.
Yeah, I actually sent a question ahead and one of them was, we set the salary for this position just at, I believe, our last meeting, and it was based on a set of comparables. And unfortunately, those comparables that the salary was based on weren't fully represented in the list of cities that we looked at for management leave or administrative leave, however you want to call it. And so for me, I really, is that something that's available tonight? Because it's applicable to this. And I was hoping to see that.
Dana, I know that you've been working today on pulling up those other comparables, so she can pull it up for us really quickly. So thank you, Jennifer. Councilmember Napland.
Yeah, because just looking at the ones that we base the salary on, because really it's a full compensation package that is what's relevant. And so the cities that we base that on, 2 of them offer 40 hours. One is actually only up to 40 hours. So I'm not exactly sure what those hours are. And then another one does not offer it. And so this employment contract looks like it's offering 60 hours. And so I was just trying to understand, what possibly some of those official comparables, what they were. Let's see.
Yeah, sorry, this is kind of small. Oh, good evening, Council. Dana Mason, Finance Director. So I did receive a response from 2 more of the cities, and I've sent out, requests to the other ones. North Bend provides 36 to 90 hours for exempt employees, with directors are the only one that received the 90 hours. And then Snoqualmie offers hour-to-hour comp time for all exempt employees, and they can have a max at any point in time of 40, and then they can carry over 24 of the hours at year end.
Mm-hmm. Was there a third that you said that was added that was one of the
Let's see, Lake Forest Park, Woodinville we had.
There.
I think that's it for right now.
Okay.
And I apologize, when I gave the intern the instruction to do this study, I just said anyone in the population of 5,000 and under 50,000. So he basically was looking at cities where he could find the information in their municipal code.
Yeah, that was only my concern, is sometimes when you go searching for management leave or administrative leave, what you're going to find, because you're looking for it, are just the ones that have it if you're searching under those terms. And so I wanted to get a sample of cities that we use for our comparison, because some might not have it. And
right.
I just wanted to.
We also did have Monroe as well, and Woodinville. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll have the rest soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just interesting to me that we were going beyond what it looks like is typical. I guess that was an administrative decision to do that. So I was just trying to understand it more. And hopefully in the future, we'll have some kind of policy that outlines this. It's really unclear to me, to be honest with you. I had no idea that this position would, be something that an employment contract would be offered, and that there would be things offered above and beyond what other employees have. And so it was kind of unexpected to see it in the packet. And, one thought, as we have additional positions, I don't really know which positions get employment contracts, which ones don't, which positions potentially could be eligible to negotiate leave, which ones potentially can get severance packages. It's really kind of, I just had no idea that this was one. So anyway, the thought of something that could work in the future is if, we're going to go out to advertise a position, if maybe council understood that is, often when a job is listed, it talks about some of the benefits of the position, and when we've advertised some of the director positions, it's pretty clear, this position offers administrative leave, it offers, certain things. And so just to have a better understanding of which positions have things and which don't, to be, transparent to everyone and have clear expectations, that would be helpful for me.
Thank you. Yeah, and you know what, as we get through the finalization of the salary survey, I think we can probably pull out anything that's management exempt would be technically subject to be able to do a contract, right? Anything that's in the union, it's all governed by the CBA, but our goal is to have policies in place so that we don't need to do that. So that it's all in the personnel manual, and it's very clear when we get that finalized moving forward how it all comes about. So. Mayor Pro Tem Remington.
Thank you, Mayor. I think a lot of us are on board with wanting to avoid any questions that we have in the future regarding salaries and try to have a system in place. I've always supported having a complete list of job positions in the city, including those in collective bargaining agreements. And then along with that, having their job descriptions, and then certainly the salary and benefits. We don't have the opportunity, having a HR department, human resources that would work on those things. But I think that if we can get those in place, it'll help avoid these things. It'll be really clear. Everybody knows. Employees, it really helps them because they know if they get a position, here's what the pay is, here's what the benefits are. And those things can be modified and updated, certainly with cost of living increases. But I think that's a system that if we put it in place, will streamline it for us. I also just want to recognize that while we approved the salary part for this position in December, if you're adding other things, we don't have a current process, so you have to bring a contract forward. I don't know of any other, at least myself. So I think this was a bit confusing. Now, having said that, and I'm going to repeat myself on something, I think it's so important. This position is so critical for us as a city. We haven't had it for a while, which means others have taken on the responsibility. But having been in the fire service, I can tell you that it's a lot easier to avoid fires. And the way you do it is having a good inspection team. And when you're looking at those original designs, you want to make sure that the wiring and the plumbing and the HVAC, the heating and air conditioning systems are all done well. You go out and inspect them, because once the plasterboard's up, you don't get to see what's behind the wall until the fire shows up. So these are critical for public safety. And while we're not talking about that tonight, I just want to really highlight that. I think we're really pleased to have that position back in. It's going to be good for us as a city. I think on the side, unrelated to the position or the work, we're still trying to work on how to streamline things and make sure that we don't have surprises. I think we can get there working through the Finance Administration Committee. Hopefully with the city administrator, we'll have a little more bandwidth to work on some of these HR issues and work closely with our bargaining groups to make sure everybody's on board, no surprises. It gives you the flexibility as a mayor within those guidelines to make decisions, move things around. So anyway, I think we're headed in the right direction. I appreciate the questions Councilmember Naplin brought up, because I think many council members had those questions as well. So thank you.
We'll get there. We're making progress every day. It's just slow, but we will get there. So the question for council now is, would you like to suspend your rules and approve this contract this evening, or wait until the next meeting?
Councilmember Hoag had a question. She's raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand, Councilmember.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. So I guess one of my questions has to do with, I really would like to see these kind of things be in policy instead of in a contract. And without having it in policy, what will happen? Like, say they don't use their management leave, do they get paid out at the end of the year? Because I've read through some of other cities' management leave policies, and it kind of spells all that out, what happens.
So there is code on that. Ms. Mason can probably expound upon that a little bit more.
So our city, you lose your management leave at the end of the year, unless the mayor authorizes it to be carried over. So if there is some reason you were unable to use it for the entire year, the mayor has to authorize you to carry it over.
And that's also another policy I want more clarification on, because you don't want favoritism of some people getting it transferred over and some not. So that's one of the things I would expect when we get the policy written and updated to clarify that on what constitutes being able to carry it over. I think we can all agree in this year with COVID, that would probably be a legitimate reason, but we need to, that's one of the areas we're going to need to make clear in policy so that there aren't questions, and it also makes it easier for directors and future mayors and city administrators to keep consistent and be clear on that.
Just to add to that, we didn't authorize any carryover administrative leave from 2020 to 2021. And so there were a few management employees that, that couldn't just use it because of exactly what the mayor said, is the departments were busy. We couldn't really use the leave. So even though, a lot of times in cities we're granted that leave, I can tell you it's not easy to actually take it.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Any other questions or thoughts from council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, Mayor, I'm ready to move forward. Like I say, I'd prefer to have a different process in place. I do think there's, still questions, not just on this position, but overall on whether it's, I won't get into specifics, but I think how individual contracts are laid out. We certainly want to have our employees well compensated, and we've looked at comparables And while I realize there's some questions out there, unless council wants to recommend a change tonight, I expect we'll at some point move forward. And for me personally, I'm happy to do that. If others have questions and would like to have more information, I guess we'll find out. I would recommend that we suspend our rules in preparation for at least discussing and looking at whether we can move this contract forward tonight.
Is there a second?
Second, McHenry.
All right. Any discussion on suspension of the rules? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain a motion on the underlying bill.
Mayor Mike Remington, I propose that council approve Agenda Bill 21-05A, the employment contract of Brian Keller.
Second,
Yeah.
Fred Nicky.
Henry.
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Remington. Councilmember Brednicki is a second by a hair. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we do have the motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes, and thank you and congratulations to Mr. Kaler. So we will go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, unfinished business. We've moved it around a little bit. Agenda Bill 21-08B, Municipal Code Chapter 10.01 update for 15 minutes. And this is formally Agenda Bill 20-123 from 2020. Mr. Kaler. You're on mute. Or he may have left for a moment.
I wonder if he walked away right there.
He may have.
Well, I want to go back and look at that contract then.
All right, well, maybe do we want to rearrange the order again until he gets back to the screen?
Or probably do the floodplain pretty quick, couldn't you, Laura?
Yep.
You're on mute too.
Yep, let's go ahead and do the floodplain ordinance because that should be pretty quick. And you're on mute.
There we go. I had a hard time getting it to come off of mute. That was weird. I've not had that happen before. So good evening again, Mayor and council members of our community. This evening we held a public hearing for I'll call it the permanent floodplain ordinance. We can't take any action this evening because Planning Commission is going to hold its public hearing next week, and then we will come back at the following meeting on the 19th for approval of the ordinance. But I can definitely take any questions or comments.
Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, I'm not expecting that we're changing anything here, but one of the things I just wanted to call to everyone's attention is the provision that when you have manufactured housing, if there's any kind of substantial improvements, they are affected. They have to go on a permanent foundation. And I just want us to keep tabs on some of that because the facility that's there on the land right there by the river, I'm pretty sure they're not on permanent foundations. And so just an observation.
Thank you. All right. And if Mr. Kaler's not back yet, we'll go ahead.
He is back from his break.
Okay. So, oh, there he is. Okay. So Mr. Kaler, would you please take us through your agenda bill?
Good evening, Mayor, and Council, and members. So we have gone through, provided Exhibit A, which is the Chapter 10.01, the strike and delete. So what we did is we kind of reorganized all of Chapter 10.01 to kind of follow the rest of the municipal code. Currently, it is in line with Chapter 1 of the IBC code. And a lot of it referenced a lot of the existing building code. And so what we wanted to do was just show the amended code. And that's why a lot of it has been struck from it. And then we also provided a clean copy, so you can kind of reference, you know, what we are actually amending of all of the family of codes. Mainly, what I want to at least point out is the appendix. Like I mentioned earlier, in December, we were going to adopt a lot of the appendix for the IRC as it pertains to our development within the city. So a lot of the city that we looked at, so it would be like gas piping, kind of venting, and energy code. I know small, like tiny homes are a big thing, and that's what we also are adopting. You mentioned foundations with, it could be modular or ADUs. This will cover not modular, but ADUs with permanent foundations. And so that is in our building code that we're proposing. We're going to line it with planning code as well. And then as we go through the Exhibit A for adoption, a lot of it has been struck out and really just streamlined to exactly what we as a city are amending from the state code, which the state then amends from the family of codes for the International Code Council. So I'm hoping that what we're proposing to you and showing you what the city would like to adopt clearly represents kind of the direction we're going for our development. So that's kind of what we have to show you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or feedback for Mr. Kaler? Councilmember Naplin?
Yeah, great. Welcome, Brian. We're so excited to have you here. And I hope the conversation on the last agenda bill wasn't too uncomfortable. It's really about process, and it's always a little awkward when it comes up on a specific situation. So I just want to say we're excited to have you, and I've been watching your career and anxious for you to reach this point. So wanted to make sure I said that. But on this agenda bill in particular, so much of the existing section was struck and all new was added. And so I was like really trying to figure out, well, what exactly had changed? And I noticed a couple little things, and maybe there's more that are, more significant that maybe it was difficult for me to determine what items of significance were changing. And one thing I just caught my eye is it looked like the permit expiration process is a little bit different. Like it used to be, if you accidentally let your permit expire, there was a little bit of a period where if you caught it, you could reinstate your permit, and it looks like what it's been changed to is if your permit expires, that's it. And you kind of have to maybe ask for an extension a different way. I don't understand completely how it all works, but I'm just wondering, are there other kind of significant changes that maybe the building community would need to be aware of, or even residents? I mean, honestly, individual residents end up getting permits and they might not be all up on some of this stuff either. But it did look like the entire thing was struck and all new was added. And so it did make it a little bit difficult to find out what items of substance were different. So,
Brian,
go ahead.
I'm going to jump in on the permit expiration issue. This has come up specifically really over the last year. When a permit expires, we really do not have the authorization to reinitiate it and we've been working with our city attorney, Daniel. We've been reminded that contracts, once they expire, anything that expires, you can't necessarily just automatically restart. And so that's why you saw that particular change in the policy, at least for that particular one, but there were some other changes as well.
So is there no way, even if it was I could see if there wasn't a policy to allow it, but you're saying it's not even possible to have a policy that would allow that?
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And if there are any other items that have changed significantly, I'd be curious to know what they are. Thanks.
Councilmember Brudnicki.
So I just wanted to comment on the whole permit thing because I just experienced that because I had put in a permit like 10 years ago and then couldn't do the project. We had a downturn. So I had to reapply again. And of course it was, I don't know, double the price. But I think the reason, I couldn't use the old permit anyways, because I now had to send everything back through engineering and the codes and the requirements had changed considerably for something. So I can see why it has to go through permitting. You have to pay again if you miss the date. So on your test model.
Thank you. Any other questions or feedback for Mr. Kaler? Councilmember Lingle.
Yeah, this is a question. You mentioned modular construction, and actually modular construction can be technically a manufactured home that's controlled by HUD, essentially, that process. And as you're looking through the new code, have you been thinking about the fact that that's a preemptive code? Any plan that's already been approved by HUD is preemptive over our code. And I can tell you from experience that you can do two-story manufactured housing that is used with a preemptive code. So I didn't know whether, as you're doing these amendments, you have been familiar with that. So I thought I'd throw that out there as a question.
It's a great question. So thank you, Councilmember Lingle. HUD, actually, they have their own building codes and regulations completely. So they're not actually under the ICC code. So we would not regulate HUD. They actually have their own inspectors and whatnot. So that would be completely separate for them to come in with a separate building foundation. The structure itself would be under the HUD regulations. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, but building code wise, they don't meet the ICC standards. It's separate. So it would be under the HUD provisions of a structure.
Well, that's interesting because what I've seen is that yes, HUD pre-approves the plans.
Correct.
So that part is, yes, I'm with you on that. But what I thought happens, at least this is what I experienced, was that when the units are set, then the local inspector also has a role in that. So am I remembering that right?
You're correct. So the foundation part, so the fastening for the members, so if it's on a pier pad or a fixed foundation where it's a continuous footing, whatever it may be, we inspect that part of it. So the fastening part to it and the seismic strapping, correct. So all of the, beam, intermediate beam support, yes, all of that part, but the actual structure itself, it actually has a decal on the member itself that we verify that it's been approved by the manufacturer.
Okay. Yeah, I just know that we're going to see potentially more of that. And it's not just affordable housing. It can be market rate as well. So yeah, thanks. I'm glad that you're already in that loop.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to our last item of business. And it is Agenda Bill 6C, approve resolution temporarily reducing Big Rock Ball Field rental fees in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and establishing an effective date and expiration. This is formerly Agenda Bill 20-119 that was discussed during the 2020 year. Mr. Laniszewski.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, and remaining citizens. Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. So briefly recalling, there was some discussion at the council level as we were talking about rates in general for Big Rock. Is there anything we can do for the pandemic? So we did present this in my absence last week. Attorney Mr. Kinney assisted in finalizing the language presented in the packet. A couple of quick discussions I did have today, not that I want to state either way by support or non-support, but question was, one, the goal is to encourage the youth to use the space and keep them active. I think that was everybody's goal from the start. And then looking at the city's, use of the fields and our role in making equitable time available and everybody getting to have their say in use as best as we can, which has been going very well. I wanted to let you know for January and February, we are booking. January and February's bookings are up 200% over last year, which was pre-pandemic in January and February of 2020. The two heavy users are Red Wolves Lacrosse and Lake Washington Premier Soccer. We only have those 2 months booked. Those two program users are committing through June, but we are waiting for baseball. Little League puts out their information, I believe, tonight. So they are waiting on this. But then we work with them on scheduling from March through their season, which typically ends, I believe, in June, and maybe they have some all-star stuff in July. And these numbers do not include Field 3 because we don't typically rent it during the week. There's no lights up there and it's dark at 10 after 4. So that doesn't work for Field 3, the natural grass turf field anyway, because it is not lit. So wanted to share that information. We are not currently destitute in that sense for use. And I think, we just are always cognizant of the revenue and expenditures in any of our departments. And this will have impact, but it is, good to the community. So I was asked my opinion. I'm not opposed either way. I just want us all to understand the financial ramifications. And we do have a lot of bookings already. So that's what I want to provide. But your attorney has provided legislation that is reviewable and makes sense. So.
Thank you, Mr. Laniszewski. Does anybody have any comments, discussion, or if council still wants to move forward, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Mayor, Mike Remington, I have a question.
Yes.
Steve, I think this would be for you or potentially for Mr. Kinney as well. My understanding from the review is that you can't piecemeal where you give a discount. So you either give a discount to everybody or you don't give a discount to anybody. Is that correct? So I see you nodding. So
I wasn't sure.
So it puts us in a position to say we're just going to give a discount. As council, our decision is let's give a discount to everybody. And I think we originally said 50% or not give a discount to anyone. The other thing I just wanted to comment, and I thought it was interesting that we're trying to help folks out so they continue to use the field. It was pretty amazing that it's double during a pandemic what it was not. So that's actually a real pleasure to see that people are able to do that. So I think it's just up to council which direction they'd like to take. Everybody gets a discount or nobody gets a discount. I suppose an alternative is to say that with such a heavy field use that, potentially instead of 50%, we could go 25% discount. So I think there's still options for kind of look at. But it is a pleasure just to see that so many sports teams want to be able to use that field and that they're taking advantage of the opportunity. Thank you.
Any other council members? Okay, so not seeing any further discussion, so we either need a motion or the item dies for tonight.
Mayor, I move that we approve AB 20-119B, approving resolution temporarily reducing Big Rock Ball Field rental fees in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Councilmember McHenry moved, Councilmember Naplin seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. And with that, unless there are objections, we are adjourned for the evening. Thank you all and welcome to 2021.